So welcome, everybody. I am Erin Donovan. I will be guiding us through the secrets of college admissions and scholarships. We're going to be talking about a little bit of scholarships tonight as well. So we're so happy you all made it. Thank you for being here. I'd love to just welcome everybody from, looks like California to New Jersey. So we've got East Coast and West Coast here. Buffalo, welcome. Yes, great. So I'm so glad you all are here. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions along the way, we really want this to be an informative experience for you. So please don't hesitate to ask. Don't wait to the end. We will have a Q&A time at the end. But if you have something, pop it into the chat. You can also use the raise hand feature. So you can always raise your hand and I can, answer questions. I will be asking for questions throughout the presentation, but it's really nice if we have an interactive experience for you to really hear everything you want to hear. This is your time. You've taken it out of your busy schedules to be here. So we want this to serve you as best as we can. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So who is College Mastermind? We have three different focuses at College Mastermind. We have test prep, we have coaching and mentoring, and then we also have tutoring. So we do all sorts of things. If you have anything that you need for a teenager, we pretty much offer it. So we also offer some scholarship support and financial ideas as to how to pay for college. So pretty much anything you need, you can just ask. We have a lot of expertise and we love to share it. So here is why you all are here. You want to know the answer to this question, I'm guessing. How do I get my child into a good college? And maybe also, how do I pay for it? Because we all want our kids to get into somewhere good, but we also want to be able to afford it and not have them go into massive debt to do it. So why is this question being asked by so many parents? There's a big reason, actually, and it's that education makes really bold promises in the United States. They have this whole idea that, if you graduate and get a good degree from a good university, you are going to get a good job. If you get a good job, you are going to make good money. And if you make good money, you will experience good happiness. So that is the promise that the education system makes to our students. And this is why the college admissions landscape has become more competitive and cutthroat than ever before. When a lot of us went to college, it was a little more simple and relaxed, to be honest. You went and you took your ACT or your SAT, you got your score, you submitted your transcripts, and you were either accepted or you were rejected. You accepted that, and then you paid for whatever college you could afford, and then you went, and that was pretty much case closed. So nowadays, it's a little bit different. The truth is that this idea of going to a good college to get a good degree, to get a good job, to make good money, to be happy, is not really what happens. Successful colleges, aka good colleges, and good, of course, is relative. They don't make successful and thriving students. They accept students who are already successful and thriving. And that's why it can be very challenging to get your child into a, quote, good school. So if you're looking at a competitive school, it can be challenging. And a lot of universities, even state schools, have become more competitive than they ever were. So for example, I was originally from Ohio. And when I was going to college, Ohio State was like a school that anybody could go to. As long as you paid the tuition, you were pretty much in. And now it's ultra selective, like only 35% of students who apply get accepted. So even if you're not considering Ivy League, top tier, or top 30 school, you might still run into some of these challenges as to how do we get into a good school and why is it so much more difficult now? Well, there's a lot to be said around this. And I think that it has to do with the guarantees colleges are looking for in order to admit a student. Because colleges have such a large applicant pool applying nowadays, they have a lot more choices as to who they accept and who they reject. Because of this, it makes it a little bit more difficult for a student to get accepted to a school they want to go to, even if they have the normal ranges that in the past we would expect a student to have in terms of GPA and all of the other statistics. So what are the guarantees that universities are looking for? Because remember, they want your child to already be successful, not become successful by going to their institution. So that means they're looking for success guarantees. So the first one is fit. This is what all of us think about with college admissions. When I went to college, this was all that really mattered. GPA and scores, as well as maybe an essay making sure you were a decent person. So they wanted to make sure you were going to fit academically into the school, that you weren't going to a school that was going to be too academically rigorous for you. It's still true today. However, it's only a fraction of the equation. Whereas in the past, it was probably 80% of the equation. And now it's probably more like somewhere between 25 and 40%, depending on the university. Okay. The next thing that they look for is focus. How did students spend their time outside of their academic realm? So colleges nowadays have gotten a deeper understanding that a successful student is not just academically successful. They're also going to be involved, because you have to remember that college is a place of learning and an educational facility, but it's also a hugely social and community-based experience, especially if students are going to be living on campus. So with that in mind, colleges really care about how your student is spending their time outside of their academics. They also want some proof of their successes. They want to see some challenges that they've undertaken, some maybe projects they've done, something that they have done to push them forward, to really show that they can withstand difficulty and they can persevere through it. And then they also want to see character. So character is a little bit, to me, it's a huge secret, because it's the missing piece that I think a lot of college companies do not focus on. I believe a lot of companies focus on things like fit and focus and proof, and they'll do a lot of things to ensure that their students are reflecting those. But character is a huge piece, and character really goes to say, what type of student will your child be when they step foot on campus? What personality do they bring? And that personality can have a lot of value on a college campus. And we're going to talk about all of these more in depth. This whole presentation is about these. So if you have more questions, don't worry, we're going to dive into all of these right now. So let's go deeper into fit. Fit is academic success. So fact check, this was posted in October of 2022. In a recent college admissions cycle, there were 2,000 available slots at Harvard, 8,000 US applicants with perfect GPAs, 4,000 plus applicants ranked first in their high school classes, 18,000 plus scored 700 plus on SAT reading and writing, and 20,000 plus scored 700 plus on SAT math. So you can imagine that this applicant pool is very, very academically compelling. You have 4,000 valedictorians and 8,000 perfect GPAs. And I'm guessing you have a couple of thousand perfect SAT and ACT scores, or nearly perfect, like the top 0.1 percentile. So with that being said, you can see that just because your child's a valedictorian has an amazing statistics, that doesn't mean there's space at Harvard. The other thing you have to remember is that colleges are looking to diversify their campuses. So they can't just admit all of the kids who were the academically savvy kids. Of course, they need that, but they also need creative minds. They also need other things to make their campus a good experience for everybody, because diversity breeds awesome experiences for your children as they attend campus. So fit is basically the first step in the yes, no, maybe sequence of college admissions. So let me explain what I mean by this. At every stage of the college admissions experience, your child is either going to end up as a yes, which means they will be offered acceptance. They're going to end up as a no, which means they have been denied and they will be rejected, or they're going to be offered, or they're going to stay as a maybe. The maybe pile is where most applicants start. In fact, all of them start there, because they open up that file and they look. I guess it's on computers nowadays, but I still pretend we're in the Stone Age. They open up the file and they look and they say, I'm going to consider this child for admissions. Now, as they start perusing that transcript, and the transcript and the secondary school report are the first things they will look at. If you don't know what a secondary school report is, pop a question in the chat so I can explain it further. So basically, they're going to take you through the academic experience of the student. And so as they're looking, they're going to say, is this student academically capable of handling the rigors of this of this specific institution. Now, you might think something like, well, they're really only looking at GPA today, but there's something important to know. Even though a lot of universities have gone test optional, a lot of them still will use test scores in some consideration. So, for example, if your child is in this category, it might edge them toward the no. If you're applying to a top tier, an Ivy League, or a selective university for your child, and again, selective is relative to their scores and their GPAs. If their GPAs are very high, you wouldn't want to submit a low test score because that could actually give them doubts and edge them toward the no pile. Now, they will never put them in the no pile because of a test score nowadays, but they will not put them in the yes pile if something is red flagging to them. So this is very important to know. Always only submit things that will make your application good and make it stay in the maybe pile and edge toward the yes. Every single component of the application that your admissions officer is seeing, you want that component to inch you toward the yes pile, inch by inch, because every single inch that you go, eventually it will tip you into the yes pile with enough of those inches. And every single thing they look at, they are forming a judgment of you. They are looking for reasons to deny you. They are looking for reasons to pick somebody else over your child. And the reason is because they actually need to make decisions and separate who they're going to accept and who they won't. So it's really important that you only are submitting things that will keep you out of the no pile and that will inch you every single time they see something, it will inch you toward the yes. There are some things you can't avoid submitting like GPA, but if it is optional, don't submit something that would hurt the picture. For example, a 3 on an AP score. If your child is highly exceptional and their GPA is 4.0, a 3 on an AP score wouldn't look super good. So unless that university actually gives you college credit for that score, it's not worthwhile to send that score in. I see some questions pouring in, so let's take a moment to answer. I keep hearing the term selective. Can you please define what this term means? Selective means it doesn't mean what percentage rate. Selective means a school that is challenging for your child to get into. So if you all thought my child is going to go to a community college, everybody gets in, you likely wouldn't be attending this talk. So what selective means is that it's a push to either get in or it's a push to get finances. So again, sometimes I'll refer specifically to things like top tier or Ivy League, but it would be a selective school. Again, let's take Ohio State, just because, like I said, that was a state school I went to. If you had a 3.2 GPA, getting into Ohio State would be considered a selective school for your child. So we don't want to just look at safety schools. We all want to look at some target and reach schools as well. So a selective school is any school that is a high target or a reach school for your child. In general, selective schools, ultra selective schools have an acceptance rate of 25% or lower. Selective schools in general do have an admittance rate around 50% or less. So that is what selective means. It's sometimes above, maybe around 60% acceptance rate or less. So that is technically what selective means in the realm of admissions, if you see that written somewhere. But for our purposes, selective means university that will be a slight push for your child to get in. It's not guaranteed. Any target or reach school will be a selective school for your child. So these tips will apply whether you're looking at a top tier Ivy League or you're looking at a school that maybe is not very selective. Maybe they have an 80% acceptance rate, but your child has a 2.5 GPA. Okay. So again, that's all to take into consideration. That's a great question, Mark. Thanks for asking. So let's get into this idea of likely, target, and reach. A likely school is a safety school. It's a school that your child is very likely to get into. These typically have acceptance rates of around 80% or higher in general. But also, if your child is exceptional, maybe what would be a target school for some of you would be a likely school for them. So Case Western Reserve is a great university. For a student with a 4.0 GPA and a 1580 on their SAT, that is actually more of a likely likely school. It's also target because it's still selective, but it's more of a likely school than it would be a reach, whereas a different student, it's different. So I'm going to teach you today how we actually decide what school is likely, what school is target, and what school is reach for your child, because it is all dependent on their stats, their backgrounds, and then of course, any school with a selectivity rate under 35% is a reach school for everybody. Those are the most selective universities in the United States. And even if you have the best GPA, the best stats, it does not mean you're going to get in. So that's what we call a reach school for everyone. So if your child is exceptional, but they are looking at schools in the Ivy League top tier, top 30, top 50, top 100 schools in the US, some of those will still be reach or even wild card schools for them. Wild card is just like a school that's extraordinarily hard to get into. So, okay, so let's look at how you can figure out which schools your child is going to be a target, a likely, or a reach. And we're going to look at common data set. So as you can see here, if you want to look this up, because we're just going to do one example today. I'm sure you all have lots of universities you're interested in researching. So here's what you would need to do. Type in common data set and then the college name. And then just hit search and you're going to find, sorry, I got locked out there. There we go. You're going to see something that comes up. I just go to the most recent one and we're going to get a PDF that comes up. This has different sections, A, B, C, D, all the way through F. The first section is just telling you a little bit about the university, where it's located, what type of university it is. Remember, a private university will generally be way more expensive because they don't have public funding, but some of them are very generous with merit-based aid. Not all of them, though. So do your research and make sure if finances are an issue, you may want to stick with public universities. Public schools are usually larger institutions that have state money. So those tend to be a little more affordable, but they don't tend to give as much merit-based aid. So it's something to consider if your child is exceptional. Okay, so let's scroll down to section B. We won't spend long here, just general breakdown of the class. You can always look at these for yourself. Let's come to this section. So as you all know, maybe you don't know, but there is a big debate going on in the Supreme Court right now over affirmative action. Affirmative action is basically, it helps people get diversity on college campuses. So they can track what ethnicity and race you are based on the questions they ask on the Common App. In the future, it is likely that the Supreme Court will disallow this type of tracking, which means you will no longer see as balanced of classes in terms of race and diversity. And that's because they are considering it a discriminatory practice. So especially against Asian Americans and Asians, because they are predominantly shut out of universities, even though they have exceptional transcripts and GPAs and everything because of their background. So they're trying to balance these classes. So if you look here, now we're talking scholarships for a moment. These are not merit-based scholarships. These are diversity scholarships. So there are ways that universities want to give you money in order to entice your child to come to study at their university. If your child is in one of these lower represented categories, so for example, here, and here, and even here, that would be interesting. So those are the categories that are going to be given the most scholarships for diversity. So if you do fall into those and you're applying soon, I don't think that they will change the Supreme Court ruling anytime in the next couple of months. So I think you will be safe to potentially have all of that benefit of still having that diversity. But for those of you who don't have anything in that realm, let's go down to where we see some more information. Again, you're going to look through all of this on your own. This tells you a little bit about their scholarships and how they award things. So just some interesting information to look at, because it can give you an idea of how much merit-based aid they actually award students, and if it's a merit-heavy school. If most of the award is financial aid and it's heavy on the financial aid, it means that they don't offer as much merit-based money, which means if you will not likely qualify for financial aid, you probably will not get much financial support from that university. So that is important to know. Okay, so sometimes they will actually put a wait list here. Now, USC does not have a wait list, so they don't qualify this data. But there are times where you'll see that 6,000 people were offered a spot on the wait list, 3,900 accepted, and 13 were admitted. If you see something like that and your child is waitlisted, as soon as they are waitlisted, you should come to the common data set for that university and check their chances. It just helps them to see it in writing, and then it won't come from you saying like, maybe we should consider other options, because I know how children sometimes react to their parents. So it's better to come to this common data set and say, okay, look, you have a 1 out of 1,000 chance to get into this university from the wait list. There are things that you can do to make that happen. We can't cover that today, but just be honest with them and show them the stats, because it will make them feel like you're not criticizing or judging their ability to get in. Okay, you're just going to show them this information and say, oh, interesting. What do you think about that? And they'll probably say, wow, my chances aren't very high. And then you didn't have to say it. So I hope that helps you save some drama in the end. If the Supreme Court does strike down affirmative action this summer, when does this become effective? Immediately, or for which year? I think they will have to give the university some time to the common application is going to be pretty set. So unless the Supreme Court literally says you need to take that out of the Common App right now, I think they're going to need to give the universities a little bit of time to create a new strategy. So I don't know the answer to that, to be honest, but that is my speculation. Okay, so now let's go down to admissions requirements. So here's a part, and we're talking a lot about fit because these are the things that a lot of parents have questions about. Is my child an academic fit for this university? So for my recommendation is to always have students do 5 core classes all 4 years. So this is going to show us what I mean. They want you to take 4 years of English. 3 years of math is okay, it's required, but they recommend 4 years. Any ultra highly selective university is going to suggest you do 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. So let's look at the other categories that are also the 5 core subjects. So we've got math, English, science, foreign language, and social studies or history. Now you see that USC now says it's okay to only have 3 of these, but if your child can do 4, it will make them the most competitive. USC has an acceptance rate of 16%. 16% is an extremely low acceptance rate. Most of the students who will be accepted to this university will likely have 4s in all of these categories. Now, academic electives, they will tell you how many you need, so you don't need to go crazy on that, okay? But do you see that they only require 2, but they prefer 3? It means that they prefer more academic classes. So if your child has the choice to take foreign language or robotics, I would suggest foreign language unless they're going into computer science or some kind of like engineering, okay? So don't just get rid of your core classes for no reason. There is a caveat to this in terms of electives. So now this is talking just about academic subjects. So all of the classes that are outside of these 5 core classes, they are considered electives. Now for your electives, I typically recommend you keep your child's electives as simple as possible. Now, if your child is really interested in robotics, definitely do it. If they're really interested in computer science, definitely do it. If they're doing it to impress the application person, they don't need to do that. The only thing they need for this school is to have 3 academic electives. So look and find out how many, because they don't need to take AP this and AP that and honors this and honors that outside of their core subjects. The core subjects are what they look at the most, and the other subjects that are electives are a lot less important. In fact, a lot of universities won't differentiate between choir and a study hall. They won't differentiate between AP ceramics and a study hall. They won't differentiate between AP ceramics and, just a simple music class. So you don't need to go crazy with your electives. Check this common data set for the colleges that your child is interested in, find out how many academic electives they need, I would say it's very safe to do one academic elective a year, and then honestly, don't overload yourself and your schedule with other APs and electives because they do not really matter. They have their own special GPA tracking system that they create. And mostly they're looking at the 5 core classes and whatever academic electives they require. This is really important to know because your GPA in your academic 5 core classes is more important than your overall GPA. So if you start slipping in English because you're taking robotics and it's taking time, you're not having enough time to study for English, that's actually a way bigger mistake than taking the study hall and having an A in English. So just keep that in mind as you're going through this process, because it can be very tempting to heavily weight all of those APs and to really like force yourself through that process. You don't need to do that. You can keep the 5 core classes in the honors and AP track. You can make those as rigorous as possible, and that will serve you. And it also does not harm you to take less rigorous academic electives as long as you meet the criteria of the universities you're applying. And like I said, if you're going to take 4 academic electives, that should be enough. Okay. So let's get into what this university cares about. This chart will be different for every single university we do. And so we want to make sure we're looking at this for each university your child is currently considering or might consider in the future. The most important thing at almost every university is going to be the rigor of their coursework. So rigor means honors, AP, difficulty. Now, if you do not have honors and AP at your high school, no problem. If your child does extremely well in regular track, no problem. But they want to push themselves as far as they can without getting lower than like a B or a B plus. If your child is getting a B- or lower in any of their academic subjects and they're in honors or AP, you should consider either getting them a tutor to get that up. They should not have anything lower than a B in their 5 core subjects, or them dropping levels the following year, okay? Because you do not want to be in high GPA or highly difficult classes, hoping that the weighted GPA will save you. The weighted GPA is not considered in your academic record. In fact, most universities only look at the unweighted GPA. And like I said, they give different rankings and difficulty points for the difficulty level of the classes, but they will still look at the GPA as just the unweighted GPA. That's very important to know. Okay, this university does not consider class rank. So if your child is ranked, they won't even look at that. It will be grayed out and the university will never see it. Some high schools don't rank, and some high schools do rank, but they don't tell their students what the ranks are because students get very competitive. Then GPA is also going to be exceptionally high on almost every single one of these common data sets. Class rigor and GPA are always going to be very important. Standardized test scores are also going to usually either be important or very important. This is important to know because if they're saying it's very important, even if it's a test optional school, it means they're still very highly valuing it. So I'm not saying that it would mean that they will prefer somebody with a score over another, but I'm not saying that that wouldn't be the case. So it's hard to read a college's mind. And I know specific colleges where literally for 1 or 2 of the years, nobody who went test optional got accepted. So I think they're trying to work on fixing that, but I still don't think test optional is the best option. I believe a high score is always going to be better than no score because they will think that no score means the score was not high enough to submit. I'm just going to be honest with you. So every student is going to take that test through their high school usually, but every student takes it at least once, I would guess. So if a student is not submitting a score, they will know that it's likely not a high score. However, no score at all is better than submitting a low score, okay? So if you have to go in order, high score is always the best. It will inch you toward the yes. A low score will make them doubt you, and it could turn them into the no direction. It will never put them in the no pile, but it's not a great idea. Okay, application essay is obviously very important. Recommendations are very important. These are the academic realms. These are the character and personality realms. So this is what's going to give them insight to the character component. The interview they do not do at USC. If your school does it and you are offered an interview, you should always accept the opportunity. Okay. And then extracurriculars are important. So if your student is loading extracurriculars, but they're letting their grades and their GPA drop as a result, it's actually a mistake for most schools. Most schools will have these in the important categories and these not as high. So it depends on the university, okay? Now, if you look here, they care equally about character and talent. So if your child is a star athlete, they say if you have great character, it means the same thing. However, to be honest, if your child is a star athlete and they're recruiting that type of athlete, they're going to value that over character in some ways. So that would trump a great essay about how wonderful your child is any day. So if you can bring in some amazing talent, that's great. Okay, first generation means usually first generation to go to college. It can also mean first generation to attend college in the US because your parents immigrated. So it depends on the university how they're going to translate that. And then they do consider if you were an alumni at the school. Many schools will say they don't, but again, if you are very active in the alumni association or things like that, it could still help you. And then they don't really consider where you're located. They do consider your racial, this means they practice affirmative action, but they don't consider your religious affiliation. So they're not going to deny you because of a religious affiliation. Now, some schools will say that this is important. Like I've seen for a client I worked with, they were looking at going to Brigham Young University, and they are very, very interested in what religion you are because that is a Mormon university. So they want to know that, okay? So if your school is highly religious, that this might be a bigger consideration. And then volunteer and work experience are not as important as the extracurriculars. So don't have your child work to the detriment of losing their extracurriculars. Okay, and then demonstrated interest we will talk about in a little while, but it's basically your child has ways they can show that they're interested in attending the university. All right, so if you have any questions about any of that, please pop them into the chat and let's move into what I promised we'd talk about, which is how you determine whether it is a target, a likely, or a reach school for your child. Okay, so most universities nowadays do not require the essay. In fact, the SAT is getting rid of the essay component altogether. So this requirement is going to go away by 2024. So you don't need to worry about taking the writing section. If your child is doing the ACT or SAT, do not sign them up for that section. It's so long. They just don't need it. Okay, so let's take a look at, we can look at anything here. We'll do SAT scores. So the SAT scores are 25th percentile and 75th percentile. What this means is 25% of their class who is enrolled has a score lower than a 1330. Which means if your child has a score lower than a 1330, they're not likely to get in. This has become an ultra reach school because a 25th percentile is basically saying the people who get accepted underneath that have something special they're offering. They're either a racial diversity person, maybe they have exceptional athletic abilities, maybe they add something amazing to the campus. But if your child is just a typical child with a 1330, it's actually not. It's a good score, of course, but for this university, it would not make the cut unless your child has some exceptional, amazing attribute or contribution they could make to the campus. They won't be likely to get in. This is a reach school. The closer you are to the middle between these two, the more of a target you get. That becomes a target school. So basically divide those two numbers, add them up, divide them by 2. And that is kind of your target range. Anything below that doesn't mean you're not going to get in, but it's harder target. So anything that's like a 1340, 1350, you're still at the low end of the target range. Now, as soon as you start getting above the middle percent here, you start getting into your safety targets. Your safety targets are like the schools where they're targets, but you're pretty likely to get in. So we're kind of getting closer and closer to that realm. Anytime you are above the 75th percentile, that is where it becomes a safety school. USC would not be a safety school, even if you had, for example, a 1580. And the reason is because it has an acceptance rate under 25 to 35%. So this is a very selective school. So remember, in general, any amount above these scores will give you a better chance, but it can still be a reach school depending on the acceptance rate. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Now let's get into even more depth. I'm going to take the composite scores here. Do you see that 64% of their class had a score of 1400 or higher? That means if your child really has under a 1400, it's not a great chance for them. So again, you can look, we've got the ACT scores broken down as well. So just take a look at that. Now I find this very interesting. They said they don't track class rank, and yet here they say they know that they have 80% in the top 10th of their graduating class. So even though they don't track it, they still put the stats of the people who enrolled. And so it's basically like those are the types of students they're going to be accepting. If your child is not in the top 10th of their graduating class, unless they go to an ultra selective, super small school where there's only 6 people and they end up number 3 out of 6, like that would be an exception. But if they in general are not reaching these numbers, they become less and less likely and more reach schools. So I would say if your child's not in the top 10th of their high school class, this has become way less likely, even if they have those high SAT or GPAs. Okay, so let's go into GPA now. So basically, look, this is the unweighted score, because remember, I told you universities don't really look at weighted scores. So a GPA, this means that 25% of their class had a perfect 4.0, which means they never even got an A minus. So that is very impressive. These are not weighted. Okay, 50% had a GPA between these two numbers, which means the closer you are to a 4.0, obviously the better. I mean, that's a little bit obvious, but for this university, that's really the case. The closer you get to this 3.75, the less likely you are. If you're in this range, again, you probably have some exceptional thing that you're adding to the school, like athletic abilities. I don't know, you were somebody like the dean's son. I don't know how that person got in, right? So again, these are going to be massive exceptions. And so if your child doesn't qualify for one of those exceptions, either through talent or diversity or something like that, in order to, let's talk scholarships now, in order to maximize your scholarships, you want to have a good amount of schools where your child is in the top percentages of their ranges. So for example, another school that's slightly less difficult, maybe they'll only have 8% of students with a perfect 4.0, and then 25% of students here. Well, if your child is in this range, that's amazing. Suddenly you become a commodity to that school because you become exceptional. So this does not just mean that you will never get scholarships anywhere. It just means you have to not pick only ultra selective schools, because if scholarships are important to you, I'm sure many of you, even if you are not needing financial aid, do not want to pay massive amounts of tuition. You should apply to numerous types of schools, targets, safeties, and reach schools. This actually can change your negotiating power later on to negotiate a better letter of award letter. Sorry, I lost the term for that. So they're going to send you a financial award letter. You could get a more off if you are smart and strategic as to which colleges you apply to. So when we work with students, helping them pick universities, even if they are exceptional, we do not only let them apply to top tier type schools, we also diversify the schools so that we can then go in and negotiate with those higher level schools and say, hey, we got this award letter and we'd like to talk to you about possibly matching it or getting near it. And we have a whole strategy around that. So if you end up choosing universities with us, we can support you with that. Okay, so if you have any questions about target, likely, or reach schools, that is pretty much the nutshell of FIT. We got that done in a good amount of time, so we have plenty of time left for the other categories. The rest of this is awesome. Please go back with your families later and look through all of those sections. I wish we had time to break down each and every one of them because they're super valuable. Alrighty, so let's get into the next part, demonstrated interest. I told you we would come back to this. Demonstrated interest are the ways that your student shows that they are interested in attending a university. Not every school tracks this, but many do. And what they want to know is if we offer them an acceptance, will they take it? Students who have a lot of touch points are more likely to take an acceptance than students who have never visited campus. So one of the top ways to demonstrate interest is to take an interview, because it shows that you're willing to put in that little effort time. Again, not every university offers this. Another way is to go on college tours and attend either live or virtual information sessions. So this is very important. Do not forget this. Every time you and your family steps foot on a college campus, I don't care if you're just driving through, the university should know you are there, which means you need to register your child ahead of time. Even if you're just going to walk around for the day, that's fine. They need to know you are attending their university. The reason is that when they track demonstrated interest, the more you have visited, the more you have experienced it, the more likely you are to get an acceptance later on if they track demonstrated interest. They also tend to give more scholarships to these students because they know they really want to be here. So this is really, really important. There are tons of other ways to demonstrate interest in terms of getting onto their social media platforms and liking their posts and commenting, getting on their email list and actually checking your emails, as well as attending any kind of live virtual information sessions, college fairs, things like that. If a college is coming to visit your high school, attend and get your name on the list. Your name always needs to be on the list, though. Never interact with a college without them knowing who you are and taking your email address. Okay. Then early decision is the #1 way to demonstrate interest. And even universities who do not track the other ways track this. Demonstrated interest is basically supercharged by early decision. Early decision, you can only apply one university early decision. So I recommend that if you are looking for scholarships as well as more likelihood of acceptance, you might consider this. Now, there is a caveat to this in terms of scholarships. If you are rejected, then you will not, they don't always give you as much scholarships for early decision, but then sometimes at the end, if they have money left over, they give it to their early decision people first. But I would recommend, if you're applying to USC and you see their cost of tuition is totally out of the realm for your family, it may not be wise to apply early decision. Now, if you really are only concerned about getting in, early decision is the best way to go. If your child is covered financially, great. If not, then you probably want to talk to an expert and create a strategy around this so that you can maximize your scholarships as well as your acceptances, because it can affect both. It can affect both positively, or it can affect one positively and one negatively. So you would want to know all of the ins and outs of that. And it's really important because it would be very dependent on what universities you're looking at and how they tend to deal with early action, early decisions students. Okay, so we're done with FIT. Yay, we made it. Let's go to focus. So back in the day, it used to be very popular to be a well-rounded student. This is not terrible now, but what's more popular today and more trending in terms of college admissions is to have a deep dive and a narrow focus. So a deep dive and a narrow focus basically means that your child is spending their time wisely and in a very focused way. Before we talk about the actual focus of that time, what do colleges assume your child is doing if they do not have extracurricular activities? They assume they're just wasting their time away on social media or watching television or doing something mindless. So extracurricular activities are even more important than they ever were, and they've always been important. So it's really, really essential that your child is involved. If they're not motivated to be involved in something, that may be something that you want to have them work with a professional to get them that drive and motivation, because it's really important that they're doing things that are not just academic and they're not just putting in the basics. Nowadays, it's just not enough to get you into a university. Now, if you are looking to get somewhere where maybe it's a reach, this is all about reach schools. Doesn't mean it has to be ultra selective, but if your child is looking at a school where their stats, their fit is not quite there, we can get a lot of traction with this idea of a deep dive and a narrow focus. So it's great if they have an activity and then have a common theme around that activity. For example, they do dance and they do ballet and jazz and tap and hip hop and lyrical, and they do competitive dance, and they do the dance team at school. And they also have, they opened a dance workshop for kids, and they ran that for 2 weeks over the summer one year. And it was just maybe it was a volunteer experience, or they volunteered to teach dance at a high school with lower income, something like that, where a lot of their activities have a common theme. And you really look at that applicant, you go, wow, that is a dancer. That is a strong applicant at a university. And the reason is that type of dedication, it takes a certain type of personality to be able to do that. And that's the type of personality that colleges know are extremely successful when push comes to shove and things get difficult in college. My other advice to parents is try not to let your kid quit anything after 9th grade. I know it can be super hard as a parent, but I had a student last year who quit dance team. She had done competitive dance for 9 years, and she quit her senior year because she said, well, I just wanted to have senior year. And like, her mom supported that and I understood it, but she came to me a little late in the game, and we had to scramble to get clever as to explaining why she quit that, because it did not make sense in the application. Remember, we're trying to stay out of the no pile, and little red flags of things like getting to the very end and quitting can inch you toward that no pile, or at least not move you toward the yes pile, which is really where you want to be. Now, why do they care so much about this deep dive and narrow focus? It's because the more you have spent cultivating time, effort, energy, and attention into one thing, the more value you get from it, and then the more value you bring to campus. Now, the number one way to get merit-based scholarships used to be through exceptional ACT, SAT scores, as well as a high GPA. Those are all still parts of it. In fact, ACT and SAT scores are still often a huge criteria as to whether you are awarded merit-based aid or not. So if you are searching and chasing merit aid, you definitely want to make sure your child maxes out their SAT and ACT score, and obviously their GPA, but there's not as much you can do about that in terms of retroactively. So that's super important. The other thing that colleges are looking for nowadays in order to give scholarships is what type of value your child brings. If your child is an exceptional athlete, they bring value. If your child speaks 5 languages, they bring value. If your child lives in New York City and they apply to a school in Kansas, they bring value because they bring a unique perspective that would serve their students. How many students from New York City do you think go to a rural school in Kansas? Not very many. So again, if you are looking to maximize scholarships, that's the best way to do it. You don't want to just chase aid in your particular state. Don't apply out of state to like a state school, but to private schools out of state, you could end up getting really great tuition money and really great merit-based money. A lot of the state schools don't have as much merit-based money to give. They're more based on finances, and some of them have like merit-based cutoffs, and a lot of them prioritize their in-state students first. So that's a lot about scholarships. It's obviously just very general information. How to maximize your scholarship potential is very individualized. So if you want support with that, we're happy to help you along the way. Okay, guarantees. So what are the guarantees that colleges look for? They want proof that you are going to be a success. Colleges, remember from earlier, they are risk averse. They do not want to turn your child into a success. They want them to already be a success, to be worthy of attending their university. Now, a success is a different thing at every university. A success at Harvard means a very specific thing. A success at your flagship state school will mean something very different. Okay, so again, this is all relative, but what your universities consider a success, that's what they want. They want things like perseverance. They want to know you're going to be able to make it through the college admissions process. A big way to prove to them that you are a success is to follow your passion, but I put this in red because this is not always the best advice. Your passions can flit you from thing to thing and say, today I feel passionate about this and I'm going to do it. Tomorrow I feel passionate about this and I'm going to do it. What's better is to do something consistently. Remember the deep dive, narrow focus, and then to do something exceptional to prove that not only are you awesome by sticking with something, you also have a tangible result from it. This is what my company calls hook projects. These are also sometimes called passion projects. A hook project can be anything that your child ends up doing that's unique. So I call these non-teenage activities. Non-teenage activities are basically activities that typical teenagers do not do. And then they are also coupled with typical difficulty level things that most teenagers will not undertake. For example, starting your own charity. Like I mentioned earlier, your child could be amazing at dance or baseball or football, and they could start a little charity organization or a 2-week free camp or something along those lines for their talent that would take their deep dive even further. Maybe they already have a ton of service that they've done for other organizations. Well, a lot of students create service or give service and do service hours, but very few students start their own legitimized charities, okay, where you actually file the paperwork and become a legal charity. Interesting to think about. Another idea that we work with our students is creating profitable businesses. A lot of students will have work experience, but they might scoop ice cream or they might go work at the country club. But what about starting their own business? What if your child is considering a marketing degree or considering going into graphic design or considering being an entrepreneur or business major? It would be awesome for them, especially if they're applying to these highly selective schools with highly selective majors, to go in and do some kind of project around that. If your child is naturally looking at marketing, they could create a little marketing business. Not little, they could even be big. If you're profitable as a child, schools assume you will be profitable as an adult. And remember, they don't want to make you a success. They want you to already be a success. You could also have them consider starting a club or organization. This doesn't mean being in a club or organization, because a lot of students are in clubs. Very few students start clubs. So most students who get involved in clubs are basically like in the club and that's what they do. Then some students are leaders of those clubs, and then a very small percentage actually start their own and go through the process to get a club started at their school and to have it thrive and grow, and then hand it off to the next group of kids to make sure that it's going to continue in the future. And then also obviously things like research projects, doing research on with a tangible result and having something to show. This is great for any students who are considering things that are research heavy majors, because it can really be a big tick for you. And then finally, a creative work. If your child is considering a computer science program, they should be somehow already elbow deep into computer science. If your child says they want to go into computer science, but they have not done any computer science related thing, they are likely chasing a lucrative career, and that's a huge mistake, and they will not likely get into those programs. So it's important that your child is really looking at what creative works and abilities do they have. If they're a writer, instead of just journaling and doodling or doing a diary, they could actually publish something. Instead of having their own bit of writings, if they do poetry, they could publish a book of poems. Again, these are all projects that your children can do and some of them might be quite expensive to start, and some of them could be not expensive at all. So you just have to look at what is possible for your child and then what they can do. Maybe they're going to host a big event and they're going to get the whole school involved. That's great. If they want to do something like that, we have a lot of ideas. You can reach out to us and we are happy to share those ideas with you. We want parents and students to be empowered. So let's move on. We recently had a student, I put a little flower here because she started a flower charity, and she just got accepted a couple months ago to UNC Chapel Hill, and they have an 8% acceptance rate for out-of-state students. And we really, these hook projects are where they come into your essay. We wrote her whole essay about this charity and what it taught her, and she was really able to thrive. She did our application class last year, so we worked on her essays, we strategized with her, we did everything, and she had an extremely good result, and her parents were thrilled. So we're really happy when that happens. A hook project is not just doing a hobby or a passion. It's not just about following your passions. It's about taking them one step deeper. Now, remember, this type of project is what most students won't do. So if there's a stack of 20 students and they all have similar stats and GPAs and all of those things, suddenly that takes your child from an exceptional student who has lots of activities, lots of extracurriculars, amazing stats and fit, and it takes them above the rest of the stack where they have done something exceptional and they've seen some kind of growth or success from that. It ticks the box for the university that they will likely be a success, and it gives them the proof they want to know it will work out. So remember, the goal is to stay out of the no pile and to keep moving your admissions officer toward that yes pile. We want to keep them away from the no pile and then at least staying in the maybe pile every single step of the way. So if we need to stay in the maybe pile, you need to avoid triggering any red flags. We do not want to trigger red flags. Red flags are the anti-proof. Every single part of your application is either keeping the person neutral, turning them toward yes, or turning them toward no. So we're very careful at College Mastermind on how we actually structure your essays and things like that, because we go line by line and make sure there is nothing in there that's a red flag. We actually are going to be hosting a free 2-day college admissions essay topic selection workshop. So any of you with juniors, I hope you'll attend that. Diona is going to pop the link into the chat box. Please register for that because we're going to be spending 2 days and I'm going to be going through these red flags in essays. Through one of those days, we break down an essay in depth. So I really hope you'll be able to attend that because we'd love to have you there. There are 3 things universities are terrified of. That is dropouts, transfer outs, and fail outs. So we do not want to trigger any type of red flag that your child might do one of these things. So it's very essential that you stay out of the no pile. These triggers will be slightly different for each university because universities have personalities. So you need to know the universities you are applying to and whether they will fit. You are actually, your child is actually a fit for that university. If they're not, it's okay, but you won't likely get in unless you are fitting into their idea of what a successful student will look like at their university. Every student will have a different experience with this. And it has a lot less to do with fit than it ever did in the past. I mean, academic fit. Stay out of the no pile. Don't trigger them. So don't show anything that will make them question your ability to finish college. College readiness is the #1 thing that can help move you into the yes pile. And demonstrating that comes through this final piece. Character. Character is the way that we show maturity and college readiness. These are 2 things that universities really want because, to be honest, most students drop out of college or fail out of college because they were not independent enough and ready enough to take on the pressures of what college brought to them. Now, I don't like to put in these dire statistics, but so you understand why universities are so afraid of this. Around half of the students who go to college, like 47%, do not graduate within 6 years, which means dropouts and failouts are a huge problem at universities. Nobody goes off to college and pays for a first year and thinks, I'm going to drop out. That doesn't come into play. So they have started to learn the triggers of what is going to make that student likely not able to be retained. Okay, so what we need to do to counteract those red flags is, first of all, keep them out of the application. That is the first most important step. Do not have any red flags. And the second thing is to bring and increase their confidence in you through character. So why character? It builds healthy relationships. If you have good character, this means you live by good principles, good standards. You have a healthy relationship with work and discipline, and you're responsible, and you have character. You have built a resiliency around your own desires. A lot of students just do what they want, and they can get by in school because they are maybe smart or strong, and they just get by. But character requires you to push yourself out of your comfort zone. So if your child seems very comfortable, maybe they're not as motivated, maybe they are, but you really want to demonstrate this character, and it does not just come through hard work. It also comes into how you relate with people. You have to remember that college is a 50% social experience, and it's a 50% academic experience. And so they are looking for character to balance that academic fit. Character also is likely to increase your child's achievement later on. And universities don't want them to drop out, fail out, or transfer out because they want their money. Like, this is terrible to say. Universities are businesses. They do not act like public high schools. They do not act like high schools. High schools act in the interest of the students. Universities act in their own self-interest because they are businesses. They are not charities. So it's important to know that, because you have to speak to them as if they are a business. The only difference is, to buy their product, they have to decide you're worthy of it, which is kind of cruel and weird. So I guess, certain brands have that as well. You can't just go to a store and buy a certain handbag, right? You have to be on the list. So that's how universities are. And the more selective they are, the fewer people get on the list. But they want you to donate money when you graduate as well, which is why they want the guarantees that you're going to be successful. So when they look at a student, they say, yeah, I want that student to be successful, because if they're not successful, they're not going to donate to our endowment later on. And that hurts their bottom line. They're looking to stay alive. And of course, they are going to serve the students, or else they would close. But it's their secondary focus. Their primary focus is the bottom line. And that's why you see, they'll act like they want you, and then they'll slap you with a huge tuition bill, and you go and appeal, and they say, sorry, we're not going to do anything about it. If you want us, you got to pay. So you see, it's not a charity. They're really, really in it for the money. And then after the money is the student. So keep that in mind, because I think it helps you keep a clear mind about how these universities work. And when you see them as a business, you also start to structure your essays and other things around understanding what things they're afraid of and what things they want. And you no longer are just presenting your child as, hey, this is who I am, take me or leave me and give me money or not. You're suddenly saying, this is who I am, and this is why you should give me a lot of money. But you don't say that specifically. You say it in a roundabout, indirect way. So that's the art of college admissions. How to maximize your scholarships and your acceptances is being good at that, knowing how to market yourself to a university. All righty. So let's keep going. Also, if you have character, you're going to be more likely to have lasting success. Not just achieve it, but maintain it. Because a lot of people can get to the top, but if they got there through shady ways, they will fall. And we've seen that in the news, we've seen it in media, and we see it again and again, scandals, embezzlement, schemes that backfire in the long run. It's never a good idea to do business in a dirty way or to succeed in a dirty way. We want to build real character traits and skills in your child so that they will not only succeed through college and get into a good school, but they're going to continue to achieve and continue to elevate and reach levels of power, not force and pushing. A lot of high achieving students use force and dominance to force themselves to the top, when actually real success in adult life, it does not come from continual achievement. It comes a lot from your network, your connections, whether people like you. Your likability is a huge component to your success. These things are left out of the high school curriculum. And a lot of the reason is because parents will say, well, I don't want that school telling my student how to live, which is true. You all get to decide that, but they need to learn it somewhere. So of course they're going to learn it through, endeavors through you, through parts of your community, if you're involved in certain, wholesome activities. But the more exposure they can have to this before they go to college, the better decisions they're going to make, the more focused and clear and directive they'll be. And it will really, really allow them to not just burn out. And because a lot of high achievers can burn out, especially after college. They've worked themselves hard and they need a break, and they've done the grind instead of letting their personality and their character support them and elevate them so they don't have to work so hard. They can get the same result with a little bit less effort because they have people on their side who are cheering for them and wanting to help them along the way. This is also what brings them deepest happiness and fulfillment, not the success, but the character they reached to get that success. Because the people who get to the top but do it wrong, they don't end up happy. They end up unhappy, not just because they get caught, but because they will end up unsatisfied by doing the wrong actions to get there. You may think, well, my child's not going to do that. And that I get that. We all hope that for our children, but there's a lot in media these days that can give students the wrong message about where their value comes from. They might be told their value comes from their appearance, or their value comes from the money they make, or their value comes from this or that, getting ahead, being the best. But actually their value truly comes from, first of all, how they feel about themselves when they lay their head on their pillow, but also about their relationships, how much value they can bring to others actually creates value in the world, and people pay for that. So they don't pay for you to feel good about your A+ in AP chemistry. They pay because the people you helped who were not getting an A+ in AP chemistry have been uplifted by your child because they decided to help them, right? So that's what universities look for, and we have to integrate that into the application. The more you can demonstrate the character, the better. Okay, that is it. Please ask your questions. I'm going to take a sip of water. We have bonuses coming up, so this is very exciting. Let me just pop in the chat, see if I missed anything. What would determine likability? That is such a good question. Likability is determined by a couple of different things. The first thing is the university has a specific personality. That personality is something that they want to continue. It's part of their reputation. They have an essence to their university. So in terms of college, likability has to do with the essence and personality fit your child has to that university. But likability is also an objective thing. It is very objective to show that a student has ego or no ego. And those things can come through in what we write about in their essays. It will come through in their letter of recommendations as well. When we work with students on letter of recommendation, we spend a ton of time brainstorming exactly how we're going to ask for the letter of rec. And we create checklists of everything we want included, and also the things where we're trying to grow that we do not want them to include. We actually have students request, do not include these things. I actually have been working on these things, and I would love your feedback and advice about anything you think I could improve on, but please don't include it in my letter of recommendation. And that's because, again, even if a teacher says, I know they're going to work on this, but this is a challenge that they face, it still makes the person doubt, like, oh, is this student going to be strong? Likability has to do with their ability to socialize, to volunteer, to give back to the community. It also has to do with their selfishness. A lot of students' essays actually expose them. This is something that we will not have time to talk about, but please, if you have a junior, please apply for our topic selection course. And those of you who don't have juniors this year, don't worry, we offer this every single year. So just stay on our email list and you'll hear about it next year. Every single time your child is writing something in their essay, they are likely exposing parts of their personality that they didn't even realize. They can expose things about themselves based on what topic they select, how they actually speak about themselves and others and experiences and challenges, what they focus their time and effort on, who they focus on, what they talk about in the essay. So a lot of times the likability will be determined through the essays, and they will often be determined through the letters of recommendation. That is where the true likability is going to come in, which is one of the reasons why it's ultra important that your child choose somebody, a teacher, who they like and who likes them back. Do not choose someone because the grade was the highest. It is more important to have a good recommendation based on character than a recommendation on your academic abilities. Academic abilities are listed in your transcript, but likability, they can only get it from two places, letter of rec and essays, and that's it. Yes, Lisa, would you like to unmute yourself? Go ahead if you would.
Hi, I figured I'd be easier asking this question instead of putting it in the chat because it's kind of a long question. So my daughter's just a sophomore, so we are starting this process kind of early, and we actually have done a few college campus tours. My question is in regards to early decision versus early action and the impact of one or the other of those on scholarships. My understanding is that, I understand that early decision is binding, and I've heard that that may reduce the amount of merit that they offer because they don't need to convince you to go to their school if you apply early decision. But if you apply early action, which is not binding, they may be more likely to offer you more scholarship money because they're still trying to convince you to go to their school. Is there any validity to that?
Yes and no. I'm going to answer that in a way that might frustrate you, but I'm going to say it depends, which is a stinky answer. But let me tell you what it depends on so that I'm actually answering your question.
Okay.
If your child is truly a fit at that university, like a fit, and they would be amazing there and they apply early decision, then it can actually benefit them. So for example, we had students, and we always strategize this very carefully because it can be precarious and you don't want to make an academic or a financial decision that could be, very devastating for the family. So here's what we do. When we do this with students who scholarships still matter, financial aid still matters, what we do is, well, financial aid is given, but merit-based scholarships still matter. We check their fit and their likelihood. So for example, if they did a project, if they've got all sorts of awesome things and they've got high scores and they're in the top and they're this and they're that, and they've got something, they're basically in the top realms of that acceptance. We do a whole analysis for each one to decide, like, is this wise to put our early decision here? Now, this can also be true for the acceptances. Is it wise for you to blow your early decision choice on a school that you are never going to get into? Like, that to me is just not wise. So we always want to strategize based on likelihood of your child getting in. The more likely they are, not just of getting in, but of being exceptional at that university, then early decision can be a great choice. So for example, we have students who do that, and then the university comes back at the end of the whole process. I had a student who literally was given $10,000 per year extra at the end. They applied early decision, got a full ride scholarship to begin with, but they still were on the hook for room and board, which is a heavy burden. And the student did not have, they did not have the finances to pay. It was going to be, all loans basically. So what we ended up doing is she accepted right away. As soon as the letter came in, we said, great, now accept it like today. So as soon as the letter came in, 3 days later, after we discussed it with the family and we made the financial decisions and they said, like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. Then we accepted, she got her place. And then at the end, when they had extra money, she got $10,000 extra per year. It came in 2 increments. The first came around halfway through after regular decision happened, but before May 1st. The second one actually came after the May 1st deadline, when they saw the other students, and the letter she received, I should actually ask her if she still has that letter. Maybe I can find it in my text thread because she sent it to me. It's like, it had, they said, because you applied early decision, we gave you this extra 5,000. So it was, I think it was around 6,000 in the beginning that they gave extra once regular decision had happened, but before May 1st. And then after May 1st, like, she was only a few months away from going, and they were like, hey, we had extra money, and so we're giving it to you. So that happened. We've had that happen a couple of times. So that's the answer, is that it has to take deep strategy. So you have to be careful with it. But I will say, I also know students, luckily, none of our students have had this happen, knock on wood, that it will not happen in the future. But of course, we don't have full control over this. It's a scary choice, right? There is a risk involved. So you have to be less risk averse to make these kinds of decisions. I have seen in Facebook threads and things like that, people say, we applied early decision and they gave us nothing and we can't afford it. And so at that point, like, you can back out, but it's really frowned upon. So it's not really, that's not the strategy you should be taking. So it's challenging. I'm sorry that I don't have a clean answer for that. I hope it answers your question. Is there anything following up that I can answer for you, Lisa?
I mean, that's pretty much, what my impression was of the answer. We, have, been super blessed in that we probably are not going to qualify for financial aid. So we're going to be really focused on merit scholarships. And as I said, we have been doing some college tours already. And it seems like the type of schools that she's looking at are like smaller liberal arts schools that are pretty pricey. So
Yes, and don't be afraid of
yeah.
those. So everybody listen up, this is important. As long as she's in the upper 75th percentile. So Lisa, you saw all of those, look at those 25% upper 75th percentiles for ACT and SAT, as well as GPA. Keep her in the top 25% of that GPA realm. And they will be generous because they know that you have other options. But the other thing is you need to be very strategic and also apply to similar caliber state schools so that when she gets in, and she'll be able to go later. And we help people craft, negotiation letters. We don't call them that. They're called appeal letters. But you basically can appeal that decision. If any of you all want to, Deanna, if you can go to our YouTube channel and find our appealing the college award letter or financial award letter video, pop it into the chat for people. We have a whole video that we have made about that. So you may want to watch that and get an idea of what you can do once you've received those award letters. But you can't do that if you don't have awesome packages from other universities. So again, this is all strategy. It's things that, you have to, this is a game. I mean, it's a fun game to me. It's not a fun game to you all probably because you aren't as familiar with it, but it's awesome. You can get great results from these types of strategies. You can get tons of merit. And those of you who are chasing merit, my number one suggestion to you, and this may not be what you think, is to focus, especially if you have 10th graders and they're high achieving, focus this summer on ACT and SAT prep, because it will prep them for not only the ACT and SAT, which will be a huge component of merit, but also they can pre-prep for it, and they're going to be ready for the PSAT. And the PSAT does decide like national merit scholarship and things like that. And those students tend to get tons of merit-based aid, as well as they can actually be recruited by universities. The way athletes have scouts to go out and watch them play their baseball games and things like that, academics has the PSAT. And then they take those results and they find out the students, and they basically start going and trying to recruit certain students who qualify for certain, these are the academic like Olympics of college admissions. So definitely focus on test prep this summer. That's my biggest suggestion. If you're chasing merit, if you have a 10th grader, if you have an 11th grader, then, it's a little late to get that PSAT thing, but they definitely still want that SAT and ACT score high, unless you are applying to California, for example, I just lost the word. I'm not even going to pretend I can come up with it. I just lost it. But the test blind universities in California. So any of those, you're just going to want to, they won't even look at your scores. But if you are applying at any universities that consider scores, they will be using those for merit still. Did that help, Lisa?
Yes, thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. I hope it is helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, so Kathy is asking, financial aid is not affected by early decision only scholarships. Correct. Now, Kathy, there is a timeline that can affect your financial aid, and that is the FAFSA timeline. So if you are not following us on Instagram, you probably want to. You also want to stay on our email list, because every year on October 1st, we post a reminder that the FAFSA is available. Oh, thank you, Deanna, for putting that in there. So we've got the video in there, those of you who want to see it. So for every October 1st, the FAFSA becomes available. If you are not form savvy, you should sit down with a financial person who has expertise in that. You can work with us if you want. You can find your financial advisor if you work closely with them. You can work with anybody, but have someone help you fill it out and get it done ASAP. Because universities have a limited amount of money and they take students on a first come, first serve basis. So I do not even tell parents when the deadline is. I'm not going to tell you when the deadline for the FAFSA is, because if you're applying on the deadline, that means you are way too late. Do not wait until the deadline. October 1st of your child's senior year, you should be printing out, I think it's an electronic form. You should be filling out that electronic form. It takes usually a couple of days because they're asking for a lot of things. If you can have your financial advisor or a company like us who's going to help you plan that for you, we can lay out exactly what you're going to need to have and submit, and basically have all of that ready. They're going to want to know all that information and hit send and get that in within the first week if you can. Do not procrastinate. Procrastination in terms of financial aid is the biggest mistake. They cannot go back and give more once it's gone. And they tend to be more generous with the people who are very, very proactive. I also think in some ways it demonstrates interest that your child is like on top of this college admissions process and that your family is serious about it. So definitely, definitely do that. I hope that helped. If you have any other follow-ups, Kathy, please go ahead and unmute yourself. But in terms of early decision, that will not change the financial aid in any capacity. It will only change your merit-based aid potential. And it will either help it or hurt it, depending on how you strategize. And the other thing to know is that if you do not submit your deposit by May 1st, your opportunity at financial aid is completely taken away. And oftentimes the university also takes away merit scholarships. Do not wait until beyond the deadline. In fact, I recommend submitting your decision well before May 1st, because you also tend to be given priority for housing and things like that. But if you are doing financial aid negotiations and you're trying to get a higher award letter, you may want to wait to be a little closer to May, but not too close, like end of April. Middle of April is where you want to start making that decision. Don't wait until the end. It can be very stressful as well. So again, these are all very challenging situations to be in. So I really hope that you all feel supported through this process. Just know you're doing a good job and do your absolute best to stay on top of it. You're welcome, Kathy. I'm glad that helped you. Okay, Mark, in terms of extracurriculars, my son is a 2-sport athlete, baseball and cross country, but he's not a star athlete and will not be playing in college. How will this be viewed by colleges? What more should he be doing for extracurriculars? That's a great question, Mark. So in terms of athletics are great, even if your child is not going to be captain or have a leadership position, or he's not going to play. If he can get a captain or a leadership position, even though he's not the star, that's great. He should. Just because a student isn't the best, or just because a student is the best doesn't mean they make the best leader. Sometimes someone who is not the best makes a really good leader because they're not so busy being the best. So it doesn't mean he couldn't go for a leadership position. If it's possible, encourage him to do that. That would really help him shine. The other thing you could have him do is do some kind of mini project, even if it's something small. You could do a larger project, but if he's a little bit less self-directed, that would be challenging. If he's going to do it on his own, have him do something small that will set him apart in the application process. If you would like us to brainstorm with you, we do offer brainstorming sessions. So we'd be happy to do that. I would just say that in terms of how it's going to be viewed by colleges, he will be viewed as a very, very strong candidate. I think that's just honest. He will be viewed as a strong candidate for having 2 sports for 4 years. That's great. If you also did it in 8th grade or younger, that's great. Like consistency and persistence is awesome, and they will view that very well. If you are trying to get him an edge, that's where those other tips come in, okay? So it's not like he's lacking anything. He's doing great. He's consistently showing up. Just don't let him quit either of those sports. And if you can do a little bit extra, that would be good. Starting a business. He is leaning toward business. Yes, that would be awesome. And it could be baseball related or it couldn't be, but we could he's been playing since 5. Wow, that's awesome. So he's very good. He could do something baseball related for his business, but yeah, that would be a really fun project to start a business. That's one of our favorite ways to work with our students. It's actually, in my opinion, also the most successful way, especially if you can get the business up and lucrative in any way. It can demonstrate so much to a university. I believe it's the strongest way to get a child in. If you actually want to have your child do some kind of internship or something like that, please reach out to me. We've got some connections and internships that can also be a way to go. And we don't really charge to partner you up with internships. So if you are interested in that, you can reach out to us through email. We're going to be sending you bonuses, which we'll talk about in just a moment, but you can reach out to us and we will try to connect you. If we have any kind of, like, if you want a marketing internship or something like that, you can just let us know what your child is looking for. If we have something available, we'll connect you. And if we don't, we'll just tell you the truth that we don't have anyone. And sometimes we'll maybe do a little research for you and put our team on it. We have a whole team who helps, facilitate an awesome experience for our students. So we'll put them on some research and see what we can come up with for you. So the other thing I want to talk about before we get to bonuses is You will, if you decide to receive our bonuses, you'll get on our email list automatically, and we're going to send you these bonuses through email, which means you're going to have my email and contact information. So just reach out to us and ask us any questions. We always want to support you and be here for you. So we try and be a really proactive company, helping parents as much as we can. We know this process can be daunting, and we want to be that support that you turn to, because honestly, I mean, it is fun for us because we like the game of college admissions, but also if at some point you decide you want support, we want you to think of us first. We don't want you to go somewhere else, because we want to have given you a lot of value, and we want to show you that we're serious about what we do and we know our stuff. So we love to support you all. So the first thing we're going to be doing is be sending out a registration link for our free college essay workshop. That workshop is starting May 20th and May 21st. Please, please, please share that in every Facebook group with every parent. Tell your school about it. Have them blast it out through email. It is a completely free workshop. It is 2 days where we help students pick their topics for their college essay. So this is not going to help them write the essay, unfortunately, but by the end, they will pick their topics, and they're going to get so much valuable information about essays and what to avoid. So make sure you register your child for that. They're going to love it. Okay, then we're also going to send you a real past SAT and a real past ACT test. For those of you who have children who have not taken these tests yet, they can have the opportunity to take a look at those and try them out and score them and see what they do, so that they can decide, like, you know, what type of help do I need, especially if you've got a 10th grader who's high achieving. If you have a 10th grader who's in the 4.0 type GPA realm and they're on track for honors, AP, all of that, they want to be scoring around a 1450 or higher on SAT and around a 32 or higher on ACT. If they're not starting at a score around that, they probably want to get into a test prep program over the summer, because like I said, a little bit of prep over the summer can make a huge impact on those scholarships, national merit finalist scholarships, all of that good stuff. So please, please get your child into ACT prep if they're not, or SAT prep this summer if they're not doing that. Okay, and we also offer a course over the summer if you want it. Of course, we don't want to push you, but we always want to offer something. So if you are interested in that, you just can respond to the email we send out to you and we'll get you the information. We have not opened registration for that one quite yet, but it will be open within the next couple weeks. Then we're also going to give you a college visit PDF in your bonuses. And this is going to include basically a tracking list of questions that your child can ask themselves as they're going through their college tours, so that they can actually decide what is a good fit for them, and they can start to narrow down their choices, which is very valuable. I recommend in 10th grade and 9th grade, you start to visit local universities to get your child understanding what the difference is between a larger school and a smaller school, right? Just try to get them into visits so they can start to understand and break their lists down. It's really tough. Like, we work a lot with juniors who are still picking their colleges, which is fine, but it's really crazy if at the end of junior year, your child suddenly visits a school and they say, wow, I don't like this small school, and half of their list is small schools. At that point, you're restarting. So do that work ahead of time if you can, and use our visit PDF, and that will help you a lot. We're also going to give you a complete letter of recommendation guidebook and a sample. We work for 4 to 5 sessions with each of our students to do letters of recommendations and help them do support with that, because they're so important. So definitely take a look at that. We give a couple of questions to ask you, as well as some things to consider from that letter of rec. And then, oh, University of California, that was what I couldn't come up with. I was like, California State? I knew that wasn't right. University of California. So the mini guide to the University of California, you might say, I'm not going to attend California schools, and that is no big deal. This guide is still going to support you. And here's why. University of California was one of the first very large school systems, university systems, to become test blind. I believe within the next 10 years, every school will be test blind in some way. And I think something else will come in. I don't know exactly what it is yet. Check in with me in a couple more years. But so those of you who have younger students, like maybe you do have a high school junior or high school freshman, but maybe you also have a 7th grader, a 6th grader, or someone younger even than that. You probably still want to look at this guide, because this is the first school system to have a system of admitting students when they are not looking at schools or at scores at all. So start to look at that and see, like, what are they valuing? And we kind of break it down in the whole guide there. So we hope that helps you. And finally, we send you an ideal timeline and checklist for college admissions from 9th through 12th grade. So we know that's going to support you, and we hope that it will really, really be beneficial. So if you have any questions on the bonuses, please let us know. Deanna, if you can pop into the chat, maybe you already did, the link to make sure everybody registers for the bonuses. Just go ahead and register. Once you're registered, we'll send those out to you, hopefully within the next day or two. We try to keep an eye on those things. So if you're watching the recording, we will hopefully add you within a couple of days. So don't worry if you don't receive anything from us for a few days. We'll keep our eye out. We have one more big bonus, which is for everybody, but I'm going to talk about it in one realm. So juniors, those of you with juniors right now, we have a college application group class that's starting on August 14th. And we have 3 different tiers of levels you can apply to get varying levels of support. So Deanna, if you can throw that link into the chat right now, those of you who are interested in getting group support from us, or even a hybrid level of support, or our VIP Ivy League level of support, you're going to see the different options we're offering for the class of 2024. We also do a completely private level, so take a look at that if you like. But basically what we want is we want to know that your child is going to be taken care of in every realm of their application. We're going to do it from start to finish. It's a 9-week course. They get a session every single week with us live on Zoom. And then they also get office hours every week to come in and workshop with us, ask us their questions and all those good things. So those of you who don't have juniors yet, no worries. We are also going to be offering a 10% discount for anybody who applies within the next 48 hours. And the code for that, those of you who are going to the link, is early_10. So that is only good for the next 24 hours, which gives you till April 28th. Okay, I think it's until 8 a.m. April 28th. I think I gave you a little bit more than 48 hours. And so go ahead and register if you're interested. If you have questions, book a call right away. If you can't find a time on the schedule, then reach out to us through email. You can reach us at contact@collegemastermind.com, and we'll make sure you get in and you get your 10% off if you want to ask us questions before you register. We're happy to support you. Now, those of you who have ACT or SAT ready students and you want 10% off our summer class, you are also welcome to do that. All you have to do is let us know you're interested in registering within the next 48 hours. We will pop on a call with you within the next week and we'll honor that 10%. So just respond to our email within 48 hours and we will honor that. Or you can email us today at contact@collegemastermind.com. Deanna, if you can put that email into the chat box, that would be wonderful. So that's all. Those are everything. If you do not get your bonuses and you don't know where they are, you can email me personally. This is my personal email address, Erin@collegemastermind.com. I'd be happy to support you and make sure you can find those. Please also check your spam folder because unfortunately we are not spam, but people sometimes think we are, especially Gmail. So if you don't see something within the next day or so, then check your spam folder because it means we got spammed. And if you're missing it and you can't find it anywhere, just email us and we'll be happy to still honor those percentages if something happened and you couldn't find the emails. So that's all for now. If you have any questions, please let us know. We're happy to support you. I'll leave this up so you have the email address and I'll check in the chat. Okay, Deanna, thank you for getting all of those in. I'm going to also just pop into the chat. Actually, Deanna, if you can pop in my calendar link, go ahead and pop that in for those of you who need it. So I'm here to support and answer any more questions you all have, and I will stay as long as you do. So that's it. I'm going to stop the recording, and I'm so glad you all were here. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to serving you.